Hey, help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button to subscribe if you want more Cavs-focused content. The Cavs have finished one of the more historic sweeps in NBA history, and there's a lot to learn from what we saw the Cavs do to the Miami Heat. And in order to talk about that, to bring on Danny Cunningham, who was there for the massacre in what I always will call American Airlines Arena. I know it's called something else now.
Kaseya Center.
Yeah, the Saya Center, or whatever they call it now. These things, these arenas switch so often. But first, before we get into anything technical, I need to hear more details about what was, in your opinion, the saddest swag surf you had ever seen.
Oh my God. So they do it in Miami, they do it between the third and fourth quarter, right? Like I don't know about every arena, but most arenas have like staples that they do certain things at certain times before games. Like the Cavs do this with their pregame intro. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of different organizations will do things at different times. And Miami, which, I think there's a bigger conversation to be had whether Miami is an arena that should be having a swag surf between quarters. I don't know that it necessarily fits
I
that
will say
fan base.
this. I will say, I live in Atlanta. I've been to plenty of Atlanta Hawks games, and this is Atlanta we're talking about. And I question whether they should be doing the swag surf out there in
Yes,
Atlanta
I
because
think it's probably more appropriate for the Hawks than it is the Miami Heat. But at the end of the third quarter, and I wish I remembered what the score exactly was or what the deficit was, but Ty Jerome hit like a 43-foot buzzer beater at the end of the third quarter, and I think the Cavs were up 111 to 65. I'm not positive about the score, and the people I felt the worst for at this game were the in-arena hosts. Like their version of Ahmad Crump having to do the stuff that like
oh
gets fans fired up in timeouts when the action's not going on. And they're
yeah,
down by like 55 points doing this. And I'm just like, this is unbelievable. So they turn out the lights in the arena and they tell everybody to, use your cell phone flashlight because that's what we do in 2025. And Swag Surf comes on, and I'm just like, this is the one of the saddest things that I have ever seen. The arena was half full, and I think the people that were there at the end were not the same people that were there at the start because, as you probably know, if you've ever watched a Miami Heat game, it is a very late arriving crowd, I think is a fair way to put it. And the crowd was better in game four in that massacre than it was in game three when a game started at 1 o'clock in South Beach, which was not a
yeah.
great thing for the Miami Heat. But it was just like, what are we doing here? I felt so bad for the game operations people in Miami because it's not their fault that their team just decided, hey, can we actually get on a flight to Cancun tonight rather than wait until tomorrow morning? But it was just an incredible thing to witness live.
That reminds me of a story I have heard Dominique Foxworth tell about one of his friends on the Detroit Lions the year they went 0-16. He was like, yeah, man, before every game, they would play I Put On for My City. It was when that song just came out. So, we get ready in the tunnel one day, and they ain't playing it no more. And I'm just like, they don't even want me to put on for my city no more. Like they don't
Nope.
want us to put on. And I'm like, I wonder at what point after the Ty Jerome 3 does somebody have to buzz down and be like, hey, we're gonna play something else. Like,
Yeah, like and every arena does this that I've been in. They'll do like the noise meter, right?
oh
And that
no.
is when you see the sound gets pumped in and it gets a little, I think, artificially loud. And this is, every single team it feels like in the NBA does this at some point. And Miami's doing this. And the Cavs are up by like 45 points as this is happening. I'm just like, could you guys just read the room a little bit better? Like I understand that, these things are sponsored and there are typically marketing dollars from outside companies that are attached to these things, right? Whether you are aware of it or not, some of these things are actually sponsored. I'm just like, man, read the room a little bit. Like I understand you got t-shirts to give away and stuff like that, but this is just awkward for everybody involved.
Hey, look, if I'm operations guy for the Miami Heat and you down 40, the t-shirt gun is the only thing staying. Actually, more t-shirt gun. Because look,
That's yes.
any arena, any stadium, any gathering of more than 100 people at a sporting event, you start throwing out t-shirts, people get excited,
So
right?
the other thing too, And Miami, not every team does this, but some teams will do like the seat upgrade, right? Where they have a couple of seats that are close to the court that they didn't necessarily sell, and it's a sponsored thing, and they go, we found these fans in section 207. We're gonna upgrade their seats to the third row behind the basket. And Miami did that at the end of the first quarter. And I turned to a couple of the other local reporters from Cleveland that were down there. I just go, do they have to accept those seats? Like, do they want to be closer to the action? It was, Davion Mitchell just hit a buzzer beater from half court to cut the score to Cavs 43-17 after 12 minutes. It was like, do those people have to go closer to the court when they'd rather just hide their faces in the upper deck?
Yeah, it was a shock. Well, I don't want to say shocking because like the Cavs were clearly capable of this, but it was something to see the Cavs just dismantle this Heat team that, did look decent in the play-in, right? Like, did not come into this series looking awful. People thinking they could probably steal a game off the Cavaliers, and boy, did the Cavs just sniff out any notion of that. Which goes to what the main topic of today's video is, right? We want to know what we can learn from this series because you understand it's a 1-8 matchup. Miami is ultimately a 37-win team. There's only so much you could take away from this series, but it's also our first look at this Cavs team in the playoffs. And I think that's my first takeaway, and you tell me if you agree, is that definitively this feels like a different team than last year.
Yeah.
Than previous years. Like, this is just like, you knew it was by how they handled the regular season, but you wanted to confirm it in the playoffs. That didn't feel anything like watching last year.
No, it felt entirely different. They have so many more answers offensively. Some of that I think is coaching. Some of that is, Evan Mobley is just a much better basketball player than he was 12 months ago. Darius Garland obviously only played in the first two games of this series, but I thought he was pretty good in those first two games, particularly in game one. And he gets overshadowed a little bit because Donovan was awesome and Ty Jerome had 28 points off the bench, but Darius Garland had 27 in that game. Like, he was great. But they have so many different things they can do that if something's not working, right? Like in that first game, DeAndre Hunter went 0 for 4, didn't score. Was fine defensively, but he had very little to no impact on the game offensively. And then you fast forward to the end of the series, and it's like, oh, Miami has no answer for DeAndre Hunter. The Cavs didn't have anything they could do like that last year. It was basically, hey, is Donovan Mitchell awesome today? If so, the Cavs might win. He could go for 50 points like he did in game 6 against the Orlando Magic last year, and the Cavs still lose. But if Donovan Mitchell's awesome, the Cavs have a chance to win. Now, in game 3, the Cavs win by 37 points in Miami, which I did not see coming. Donovan Mitchell was 4 of 14. He was not very good offensively in that game, but this team has so much depth. They have so many answers. They're so versatile on both ends of the floor, too. And I think that's a really important thing to take away from this is the Cavs underachieved defensively during the regular season this year. They
Yes.
finished 8th in the NBA in defensive rating. And when you have a roster that has, DeAndre Hunter for half the season, Evan Mobley won Defensive Player of the Year, Jarrett Allen, Dean Wade, Isaac Okoro, like you have Max Strus, you have a lot of really good defenders on this team. I thought 8th was below what their standard should have been. But part of the reason why the Cavs finished 8th defensively was because they tried a lot of different things throughout the course of the season. They played much more zone. They would go to a box and one at a time. They would switch everything. They would switch nothing. They would do a lot of different conceptual things on the defensive end of the floor to kind of figure out what they could or couldn't do when the postseason arrived. And then I think that you saw that immediately. And listen, had they not done that stuff during the regular season, they still would have dismantled Miami. Like, Miami just had such a significant talent deficit to the Cavs that doesn't matter. But I think that it was the outcome was exaggerated because of what the Cavs were able to do in the regular season, because they could go to the defensive strategy they used in games 3 and 4, where we're just going to top lock Tyler Hero. We're not going to let him get the ball, and Miami has no other answer because they don't have enough guys that can dribble. I don't know if they could have done that last year, because I don't think that they would have tried, experimented with so many things during the regular season that would have given them the confidence to say, hey, we're up to nothing, but we're going into a hostile environment on the road with the team having its back against the wall. We're going to try something we haven't done. Because the Cavs put that work in during the regular season, they were comfortable doing that. And then what do you see? You see Tyler Hero have two just absolutely abysmal games because of a coaching adjustment and in a defensive adjustment the Cavs made. And I don't think that stuff was possible last year.
Yeah, they just have a flexibility about them, right?
Yeah.
that just makes them so much more difficult. Darius goes out and it's like, well, we can make up for, Darius there, especially against Miami, where Miami's not going to go point for point for you, right? Like you already have an offensive advantage that, quite frankly, Darius Garland just makes overpowered.
Yes.
So you didn't really need Darius's scoring in this series. And the one thing I've noticed with this Cavs team this year, and it's contrary to what people nationally think about the team, right? Most time you hear people talk nationally, it's, oh, what's Donovan Mitchell going to give you? What's Darius Garland going to give you? Are they going to be able to give you 60 points combined in that backcourt? The thing I look at this Cavs team and go, hey, man, if Donovan's scoring 20, not taking that many shots, if Darius is scoring like 18, you're in trouble. Right? The games where you have a better chance to win is when Donovan has to score 30 or 40, right? Because then that means things have gone wrong and he has to make up for it. But that's the beauty about the Cavs is that, hey, they have all this other stuff to rely on. They don't need Donovan to do it. But, hey, if it all falls through, they have Donovan and Darius who can pick up the scoring load if they're role players plus Evan Mobley or one of the bigs does not bring a ton of scoring to this team. And then maybe you get something from Ty, maybe you get something from DeAndre, and that closes the gap, right? Game 1 is a perfect example of that. You got 30 points from 3 guys combined with 90 points basically from 3 guys in that game because you didn't get much from anybody else. But then you flip the game 3 and it's like, well, you didn't get much from Donovan. Darius didn't play. You got 14 points and then Ty had 10.
Right, but Max Strus is going to hit 4 threes and have 19 points, and DeAndre Hunter is going to be super efficient and score whatever he scored, and Evan Mobley's going to be awesome, and the Cavs are just going to defensively suffocate you. They can win a basketball game in so many different ways, and that is the thing that stands out about this. It's not that it's just Donovan Mitchell, it's not Darius Garland. It's you think that. Speaking as another team, you think that you have the Cavs figured out, and then Sam Merrill hits 4 threes in the game. It's well, we didn't plan for that. It's just that is what makes them so difficult to stop. And I think that we are seeing a transition in basketball, and I think it's a super interesting thing to watch. But in the past, and I'm very interested to see how the rest of the postseason goes, not just for the Cavs, but I think OKC is a really good test case for this too. But in the past, it's often been about, well, who has the best player in this series? Right. Typically, that team is going to win it. The Cavs had the 2 best players in this series with Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley. Those would have been the best player in the Miami Heat. But I also think it's starting to get to the point to, okay, who is the worst rotation player in the series? And what does that look like? If you are drafting, and the Bucks were the team I was using for this example. And obviously they're now eliminated. We don't have to talk about them. But the example was, okay, and pre-Damian Lillard Achilles tear, this made more sense even. Okay, so if you're drafting, say the Cavs would be taking on the Bucks in the second round. They're not, but say they would. If you're drafting teams, all 30 players from Milwaukee and Cleveland are in a draft pool, and you are drafting teams. Giannis is the first pick, and there's no discussion. You write the name down, you run up to the podium with that. After that, it's Donovan, and then Evan, and then probably Darius before you get to Dame. And then after Damian Lillard, when does the next member of the Milwaukee Bucks go? Probably 10th with Brook Lopez, right? Kyle Kuzma was in that discussion. He was stapled to the bench for Milwaukee. The Cavs have so many guys. What they have is they have 10 guys in their rotation that all of them conceivably could be a starter on a conference finals team. Is Dean Wade a starter on a team that wins the finals? Probably not. But if Dean Wade is a starter, can you go to the conference finals? Absolutely. Same thing for Isaac Okoro. Same thing for Sam Merrill. They have so many guys. It's just yeah, that guy is a really good basketball player. He's a winning player. He's a playoff player. And that's how the Cavs are built. And I think that is one of the things that we are seeing this go from, it matters who's at the top to, no, it actually kind of matters who are the bottom guys in your rotation. How good are those guys? Because there's just not a big drop off with Cleveland.
Yeah, and that I think that's the thing too. Most of the guys they could bring off the bench are still solid defenders, right? And also they don't have any glaring okay, they're bringing on George Niang, we could pick on them, right? And they got rid of that with the DeAndre Hunter trade, or maybe you get one of those nights from Karras where he's going to be minus 20, right? Something like that happens. Yeah, this roster just top to bottom, especially if you look at the rotation, they don't only just have 8 to 10 guys, But it's like those guys can change who gets minutes based on what matchups out there, and you feel fine. Like what with how Indiana moves up and down the floor. I think me and Tony were talking about it. You're probably going to see more Dean Wade, right? You're probably going to see more DeAndre Hunter at the 4, right? Maybe less Jared Allen at times, but we'll see how the series goes. What Kenny decides to do there, and you can basically switch up what you need for what you have at the moment. Like Miami, they didn't choose to take Darius out. It's like, okay, they took Darius out, but it made him a tougher matchup for Miami just because you had more scoring than Miami could handle already on your bench alone. And then when you add more defense there and more length, and Miami can't pass out of these things because they don't have very many particularly talented passers. I think their best passer is Davion Mitchell. He's 5'10", 5'11", right? Like not a big guy there. And he's trying to pass over Evan Mobley. Like it's just a really tall task for Miami. And you just saw that just suffocated offense. They held them to 80 points with under 90 points 2 games in a row. That's so hard to do in the NBA on the road.
So the Darius, you brought up the Darius Garland thing, and that has spurned, I think, a bad faith discussion online over the last couple of days. I think that's fair to say because it's like, oh, are the Cavs better with Ty Jerome than Darius Garland? I just think that's such a silly thing. Like Ty's been awesome, and give Ty all the credit in the world because he deserves it. And he's had a great year, and he was awesome in this series. The Cavs aren't better without Darius Garland. What Darius Garland's injury did was it forced the Cavs to play with 2 guards on the floor less frequently. Because how often, when the Cavs are at full strength, how often is only one of Donovan, Darius, and Ty on the floor? It's rare. Typically, 2 of those 3 guys are always on the floor together. But that meant that the Cavs had more wing depth on the floor, right? Like you saw lineups with Max Strus and DeAndre Hunter and Dean Wade, and then Evan Mobley playing center and Donovan Mitchell playing guards. So it's like, okay, good luck. Like, how are you going to score on that? That's what the Cavs discovered. And the thing that I'm fascinated by in this next series and down the line after that is what does it look like? Like, is Kenny willing to go to maybe less Ty, maybe a little bit less Darius to get the wings, which has really transformed from a weakness 2 years ago to a super strength for the Cavs at this point, the depth they have on the wing? Is Kenny willing to play less 2 guard lineups and more 3 wing lineups in this round and against Boston and potentially in the finals? Like that is something I've got my eye on. I think is a really, really interesting thing to watch for.
Right. So with Kenny Atkinson's next thing I want to talk about, to get to the finals, right? Presumptively, he's going to have to go through coaches who have won NBA championships before, right? Spo in the last round, Carlisle this round, and presumably we're assuming the Boston Celtics are likely to make the Eastern Conference Finals, whether it be Detroit or New York. So you're going to have to get through 3 NBA champion coaches. What do you feel like you learned about Kenny Atkinson, or maybe not learned, but confirmed about him in this kind of environment in this series versus Miami?
I think I learned about him that he's willing to do some of the stuff. He's willing to try things that I don't know coaches would be willing to try. And you could say, oh, well, that could get you in trouble. And maybe it will at some point. I don't know. But the fact that he was willing to try top locking Tyler Hero in that series, I'm just not sure how many coaches in the NBA would be willing to go to a different defensive strategy than they spent the entire year playing. Because so much of this is, well, we are going to do what got us here. And that makes a lot of sense, right? Because it would be really easy for the Cavs to say, we won 64 games. What we did during the regular season works. We don't have to change these things, especially not in a series against a team that went 37-45 in the regular season. Are you kidding me? No. What Kenny Atkinson did was, we think we see something a little bit better than what we were doing before. Now we're going to try this and see how it works, see how it goes. That, to me, is an impressive thing about Kenny Atkinson, because he had not won a playoff series as a head coach before. Obviously, he had not been part of a team like this before, but that was something I learned about him. And I think that is something that really does bode well for things in the future with the Cavs.
All right. Let's talk about this locker room, because I think that was the other stark difference here for me, was when they went up 2-0, we all remember how it felt. You know, we thought we were going to just wrap up this Orlando series last year. And then they go to Orlando, they drop a stinker in game 3, and it turns into a 7-game series before you know it. Now, the same kind of situation happens. You feel pretty good going up 2-0. You head down to Miami. And the way that this team came out those last 2 games was a killer instinct I had not seen from this Cavs team before.
Right.
Well, not before this season, but before in this playoffs, right? Had not seen that from them. How much of that is Donovan Mitchell? He seems very focused on like understanding what's in front of him and that this might be his chance to win it all. And how much is that just like the confidence that this team has now because they won so many games in the regular season in themselves? Or is it Kenny Atkinson like just being able to direct that boat and get these guys focused better than, no disrespect to JB, doing a great job. Hopefully they go 7 against New York, but able to kind of get these guys to understand the moment a little bit better. Like from you being down there and actually like interacting with these guys, what do you feel like has changed this season to where they came out in these 2 games and they look like a veteran team? They didn't look like a team that's new to this.
So I think it's a lot of it is they're not necessarily new to this. Like they're new to being this good, but this group has been to the playoffs before. This was for this core. This was the 4th playoff series they've had. Now they've not found the success they would have liked beforehand, but they're not new to being in this environment. They've been there before. I do think that there's a sense in that locker room that you know the saying, it's like, you kind of wish you would have known that you were in the good old days when you were actually in them. I think there's a sense in the locker room that they realize how special this group is. And this group is very special. You don't win 64 games by accident. You don't play, and that's with finishing the season 8-8 in your last 16 games where the foot was very clearly taken off of the gas. You don't play at a 70 win pace for 85% of the season and not be special. I also think that this is a very mature group and they realize how difficult this is because of a couple of those previous playoff failures. Like you can say that winning a series last year against Orlando was a success, and I'm never going to argue that they won a playoff series. That's a really, really difficult thing to do. There are only 8 teams in the NBA every year that win a playoff series, and the Cavs were one of those 8 last year, and that is an accomplishment. But that series should not have gone 7 games. I think they understand exactly what needs to be done to accomplish all of the tasks that are in front of them. I also think that they realize that that's not the goal. They also, the rest is the one thing too that you think about it, and this you can kind of relate to the second LeBron era, right? Where they swept the first round in the first 3 years, and then we can have a different discussion about what that 2018 team was. But in 15, 16, and 17, they swept through the first round. Why was it so important for them to stay focused throughout all 4 games? Because they wanted to have a week off before round 2. They wanted to make sure that their bodies were in the best possible position, not only to win in the second round, but to go on a deep, deep playoff run. And that's a little bit of what the Cavs were. Like I asked after game 4, I asked Donovan Mitchell about, how did you avoid complacency? How did you find that sense of desperation that I really did think they played with? Because, in my opinion, I don't know where you stand on this. I think it's a really, really difficult thing to manufacture desperation when you're not desperate. That's why we so often see teams that when they're down 0-2, they go home and they win game 3 because they are the more desperate team. The Cavs were the more desperate team in game 3 and game 4. And that was the thing that really surprised me. It's like, one, I thought Miami would have more fight. That might say more about Miami than the Cavs. But the Cavs were able to manufacture that desperation. And Donovan said it's because they wanted to work so that they could get rest before the next series. They want to be able to be as fresh as possible going into the second round. And in the second round, I expect them to beat the Pacers. I've not made some sort of prediction yet, but I would imagine they're going to be incredibly focused because if they do beat the Pacers, which they should, they know what's going to be in front of them, and they want to put themselves in the best possible position to defeat the Boston Celtics in the conference finals. And I think that really just all kind of speaks to the growth and maturity of this group because of what has happened to them in the previous couple of seasons.
Yeah, and I think to your point, right, the manufacturing desperation part of it, I thought I saw this in the regular season from them, right? Because there were times where Kenny would just make it a point coming out the All-Star break to be like, you guys sucked at the All-Star break the last few years. Let's see if you guys are any different, right? Let's try to win. Let's go in playoff mode right now. Let's lock this up. Let's end all this conversation about who's going to get the 1 seed and all that. And when they've done that at select times, obviously you don't want to go 82 games like that because you're going to burn them out before you get to the playoffs. But It felt like there were times where Kenny was like testing them or challenging them to go 16, 20 games and maintain that focus. And you could see it because you'll be watching them play like the Hornets. And you're like, why is Donovan Mitchell diving for a loose ball in the third quarter up 20 versus the Hornets, who could not care about this game any less? And it's like, oh, this is something for later, right? This is something to build them in. So they're used to it. And I thought the thing that was interesting from the start of this series was from game 1 to game 4, the Cavs were the team that was doing all the like little stuff, right? The diving for the ball, the trying to get an inbounds, right? Like the star player doing that. Like, oh, we're out hustling the Heat, and the Heat are here off hustle. And that means something.
It does. Because, and I wrote about this on my Substack, The Inside Shot. Do you remember, the Heat culture stuff, which is probably a different discussion, but do you remember when they had the Heat culture floor, which all of us laughed at? Like, it looked hideous. Mm-hmm. It was terrible. A very bad marketing decision. But it had all of these things about what the Miami Heat were. Like, it is basically, this is what Heat culture stand for. In the paint, it said in all capital letters, hardest working, best conditioned, most professional, unselfish, toughest, meanest, nastiest team in the NBA. And as I watched game 3 and game 4, I couldn't help but think, okay, maybe that is what Heat culture is, but that describes the Cavs right now. Does it not? Like, that is who the Cavs are at this point. And I think that was really on display in Miami. And what they did, they went into Miami and they beat the Heat culture out of the Heat in 4 games. And that to me is the most impressive thing they've done, because I expected the Miami Heat to fight, right? And Tyler Hero said, I know we're not going down 4-0. I can tell you that. And then they lose by 55 points. They suffocated a team, an NBA team filled with professionals, an Olympic champion in Bam Adebayo, an NBA All-Star this year, Tyler Hero, and they made them quit. They made them not want to play basketball anymore. And I think a lot of that stuff, that mindset, was built during the regular season. It wasn't all, full 82 games. You're right. You can't do that. You will burn yourselves out. You will not find postseason success if you do that. But there were stretches during this season where you watched it. And there are a few games that when the Cavs played higher profile teams, that sort of came out in them. That killer mindset, if you will. Think back to when the Cavs were on their winning streak, the 16-game one, so the final long winning streak of the season. They weren't playing well after that Boston win, right? Like, they played Portland a couple of days later. That game went to overtime. They didn't look very good. They barely hung on to beat the Charlotte Hornets in a game that they almost kicked away. And then they go to Milwaukee. And Milwaukee, obviously, as we know, as I've already mentioned on this show, not that great. But the Milwaukee Bucks have one of the best players in the world. And they had hope. Like, they thought, oh, we can make a run because we have Giannis. We've got this. We've got Damian Lillard. Like, we're good here. And the Cavs go into Milwaukee and they just beat the brakes off the Bucks. And then a couple of days later, maybe a week later, they go to Memphis. And Memphis at the time, I think, was 3rd in the Western Conference. They had not fired their coach yet. Ja Morant was playing well. What do? They go into Memphis and they just absolutely beat the brakes off the Grizzlies. Like, there were times
and they shot
during
like 29%
this season
from 3 that game too.
Right. But there were times during this season where they would see a high-profile opponent and they would just absolutely break their will. Now, I think that's a much more difficult thing to do against teams like Boston and Oklahoma City, and I really do believe that it's the Cavs, OKC, and Boston. That is the first tier of teams. After that, I think the Cavs can do this to anybody. And it'll be interesting to see if they can do it to the Pacers. But that stuff showed up during the regular season, and then it did translate to the postseason too.
Yeah, and I think, for people who are just tuning into the playoffs, they're seeing this and they're wondering, oh, is this real? Is this? But, like, I think if you watch this team 82 games, you're not learning anything new about this team, which is good because they were a 64-win team in the regular. Should have been like a 70-win team. If they really wanted to win 70 games, they could have probably won 70 games, right? If they really wanted to win like 68, they probably could have won it if they just played Ty Jerome like 10 more minutes. But like you've watched this team and you're like, no, I've seen them like kind of not play great. And then in the fourth quarter, just suffocate a team defensively at will and then make a 20-0 run and then win by 10, right? Like, and that's stuff that you expect from that upper echelon of teams that we talk about, where it's like, oh, I remember feeling this way. And I'm sure you remember this, right? The wee old days of Wayne Ellington and Tristan Thompson as a starter, like as a young guy. I think Ramon Sessions was getting serious minutes with the Cavs. Kyrie was hurt. We played the Miami Heat, and they're in the middle of the heat streak, right? And the Cavs go up like 30 in that game. And you're like, oh, we're going to win. And the Heat just like look at each other and go, okay, let's play. And then just turn it on. And next thing you know, you lost by 10.
Yes.
That is what those teams can do to you. And what the Cavs did to the Miami Heat is what they're supposed to do. Being the 8 seed's not fun. It's supposed to be demoralizing in this kind of format. And what you saw was the 1 seed do to an 8 seed what you should do, right? The Miami Heat came in here off 2 wins, excited, thinking they could steal one, and game by game, you just saw everybody around the Miami Heat just start to realize that reality was smacking them straight in the face, right? That's what the Cavs did. They sobered them up. And now, you got an Indiana team who, look, they're going to come into this game confident. In this series confident. In their minds, they eliminated Giannis, right? They're not thinking about the Bucks not being that good, right? But they eliminated Giannis. They're feeling really good about themselves. And they're going to give you a hell of a shot because for those first 2 games in the series, they're going to really believe. Mm-hmm. Now, when game 3 comes around, that's your chance to break them if you win the first 2 games, right? And that's when you get to smack them with reality. That's what the Cavs did to Miami. Okay. All right. You came back. Okay. All right. Let's show you what we can really do, right? Boom. 37-point victory. So that it's going to be a similar thing. Obviously, Indiana's not a 37-win team. They're a 50-win team. They're a much better basketball team.
Way
much
better,
deeper,
yes.
Right? They're not going to bring in guys I have legitimately never heard of off the bench in a playoff series to play like 13 minutes. It's going to be a different deal. But
you weren't grinding Pelle Larson tape before this series against Miami? That's not what you were doing?
I thought that was Jovic. I was like, is that Jovic?
So that is actually going to be one of my favorite footnotes. Like, we're going to look at that game, game 4. Cavs win by 55. The high scorer in that game was Nikola Jovic, who had 24 points for Miami. He had the most points in that game, and his team lost by 55 points. Like, that is always just going to be a hilarious footnote coming out of Miami.
Yeah. Like, this is one shining star in that moment. The Tyler Hero plus minus 44.
Yikes.
Hey, man, people are getting moved this offseason. Like, that's the kind of loss that, like, especially if you Pat Riley, you built this whole thing off Heat culture and everything. Seeing your team, like, fold like that, and, like, I think for Miami especially, that loss was really damaging because their whole thing is that ain't going to happen to us.
Right. That is Heat culture. Heat culture is we are going to outwork you. Like, because let's face it, they won 37 games. Their advanced metrics would tell you they're a little bit better than a 37-win team. And I think that obviously the Jimmy Butler stuff that they went through, I put a pretty dark cloud over their season. So I'm willing to give them a pass for that stuff. But I picked the Cavs to win that series in 5 games because I thought there's going to be a game, whether it's game 3 or game 4, where the Miami Heat say, no, we are the Miami Heat. We're not letting this happen. We are going to find a way, no matter what it is, to win this game. And they were up by 15-6. Like 5.5 minutes in to game 3. And then the Cavs happened. In the next 90 minutes of basketball between games 3 and 4, they outscored the Heat by 101 points. Like, that is what happened on South Beach. And it was just the antithesis of what Miami Heat basketball was supposed to be.
Yeah, just you don't realize you've run into a juggernaut until the juggernaut starts swinging. Right?
And they swung.
And then you got swung on. And all of a sudden people respect the Cavs just a little bit more here. But yeah, who do you think you were most excited about what they came out this series showing in your mind? Right, that's not somebody you would normally throw in this category. So like, let's leave Donovan out of it.
Sure. I mean, I kind of think Donovan gave you what you expected from him anyways. I think DeAndre Hunter,
Mm,
because he obviously has been to the playoffs before, but he's not really been in the playoffs before. Like the Hawks went to that conference finals in, I think that was 2021, where they beat the Knicks, and then Ben Simmons forgot how to play basketball right before our very eyes. But he was hurt during that run. Like he didn't play in that postseason for Atlanta. So he was there, like he watched a conference finals happen, but he didn't play in a conference finals. So for him to be in a new situation with a team that has much higher expectations than he's been at in the professional ranks, obviously he won a title in college, but that is a much different thing. But for him to have a disappointing game one, I think it's fair to say, and then come back and have really good games, I think in game two, three, and four was a really good sign because the Cavs are going to need him to be awesome to win the title. And in games three and four in particular, he was awesome. And I think that is one of the best signs moving forward for the Cavs that you can take away from this series.
yeah, he looked like the DeAndre Hunter when he first got here.
Hmm.
Right, where he's just like he made like I just how I know how good DeAndre Hunter's gonna be for like a week. If he makes one of those threes where he just like lets it go with like two people in his face, I'm like, okay, we're getting good DeAndre Hunter for a couple weeks, guys. Like
Yeah.
strap in. It's gonna be fun. He's gonna make everything. It's gonna be great. Because he's one of those people who gets to like 40% from three because he shoots like 75 for 2 weeks and then like 20 for the next other week. Like
Yeah.
he is if he did that every game, he would be he would be a key piece. Like he would be the reason you would win a championship game
I mean, that's why he
series.
went fourth overall in the draft. Like we think
Yeah.
back, look back at that draft because that was the Pelicans win the lottery. They take Zion Williamson. You have to do that. John Morant
Yes.
goes number two. The third pick was RJ Barrett.
Wow.
DeAndre Hunter went four. And then Darius
Yeah.
Garland, who has been the best player in that draft by, I think, a significant margin, he went fifth. But DeAndre Hunter went ahead of Darius Garland. And had DeAndre been on the board at number five, the Cavs probably would have taken him instead of Darius Garland. But because Atlanta took him at four, the Cavs just liked Garland a lot, obviously, as well, to take him at number five. But I do think that if Hunter would not have gone four, he would have been picked by the Cavs anyways.
Yeah, because what Darius didn't even play that much in college, right? It was kind of
Yeah,
a
five
Kyrie
games.
situation, yeah, where he just didn't have much of a rookie, but he wasn't Kyrie coming into it, so you don't get to go number one overall. Um, my thing that I was super excited about, and look, it's easy to get excited about Evan Mobley, um,
Sure.
taking Andrew Wiggins off the dribble. That's new. Taking guards off the dribble, and the aggression. I think both the bigs showed in this series. I was really surprised by how little Bam Adebayo wanted any of the challenge physically that the Cavs were
Right.
able to throw at him. So I don't know what to make of that. Like I don't know if that was like a Bam, I'm tired of the season. Jimmy Butler, we shouldn't have got rid of him. Like I kind of like because he took 5 threes and 7 shots against the Cavs, I think in game 2, and I was like, what is Bam doing for
Well,
them?
and part of it was the way the Cavs were defending Tyler Hero. Like it's not all Bam's fault.
Yeah,
Some of it was Tyler Hero's their go-to scorer. Tyler Hero at this point is also their lead ball handler. And when the Cavs are denying Tyler Hero the basketball, that means it's going to be in Bam's hands much more frequently. And Bam is going to have to make decisions while being pressured by Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen. Like the box score for Bam in game three looks fine. Why does it look fine? Because Bam Adebayo hit 4 threes in a game. He went 4 of 7 from deep. That is obviously not who he is. He had a nice game shooting the basketball, and some of those were like 9-1-1 threes from the corners. The shot clock is going off that he's got to take because he doesn't have a choice.
yeah.
But he also had 6 turnovers. Like there was a play where he had the basketball and he was trying to get past Evan Mobley, could not get past Evan Mobley, or maybe it was Jared Allen. Don't remember, doesn't matter. Throws the ball to the left corner and there's no one there because he doesn't know what he's doing because the Cavs defense was so suffocating. He had 3 bad pass turnovers in that game and 2 traveling turnovers in that game because he looked like he was playing against a defense that instead of having 5 guys had 8 guys. And I'm not talking about the 3 referees because the Cavs were moving on a string and they were everywhere. They made his life miserable in games 3 and 4.
Yeah, just I think they checked him out the series by the time we got to game
100%.
4.
100%.
Because he was like, I'm not contesting this Evan Mobley dunk. But it's going to be fun to see what this Cavs team does going forward. Danny, any parting thoughts before we head out, man?
I think the second round is going to be much tougher than the first round for the Cavs. I expect them to win, but I think anything would be much tougher than a series that ultimately they outscored their opponent by 122 points in 4 games. So maybe it being tougher doesn't mean much.
And honestly, we're like a third quarter collapse away from that being so much worse than it was.
Right. I mean, game 2 is obviously close. They won by 9. They probably should have won that game by 20.
Yeah,
like it should have been. It could have been worse. It could have been worse.
Yeah, you could argue, maybe that was where rust was showing up with this Cavs team. But it's gonna be fun to see what they do. Playoffs start now, though. Like, they haven't had, like, you watch these games versus like the New York Detroit series, and it's like going back and forth for like 2 quarters at the end of it. We haven't had to play in one of those yet. And eventually in this series, you're probably going to be in one of those games. So,
oh yeah,
the playoffs have started. Obviously, you took care of business, you did what you're supposed to do. But when we talk about like what playoff basketball is going to look like, you're going to get a stretch. In this series, in like 5 minutes, they call no fouls, and all kind of fouls are happening. We saw it with the Detroit, New York series, and countless other ones. Right, we were watching the Rockets Golden State one. You're going to get those like just crazy amount of no calls, all this stuff. I think that's the next step you want to see this Cavs team handle, because there's been a time where I think, when teams ratchet up the physicality and then they don't get the fouls with that, they tend to get taken out of their game. But I've seen them respond in those moments during the regular season, so it's another thing you want to see be confirmed. Like, okay, I thought I saw this. Let's confirm it, because you're going to get that in this next series, right? Indiana's going to try to irritate you. Rick Carlisle's going to do the shit he did in regular season, where he's like, I'm just going to pick you up the whole full court, right? Like, you're going to get the irritant stuff. You're going to get people trying to get on your nerves. You're going to get people picking at you, seeing what they can get away with. That's what's up next for you. The Miami series never got competitive enough to where Miami even had the balls to do it, right? Like,
or the guys. Like, that's the other thing. Like, I expected them to win a game because I have that much respect for them organizationally. I have that much respect for who Eric Spoelstra is as a coach. And the tools in his tool belt right now, just not good. They do not have a good roster at all.
Yeah, it was like Davion Mitchell was trying to get stuff. I think Tyler Hero at one point, like, almost tried to start a fight, but like the Cavs were up by so much they weren't even like registering that it was a hostile act.
Well, like, go back and look. So Davion Mitchell hits that buzzer beater at the end of the first quarter in game 4. And it was the ultimate, like, Chris Paul buries a huge 3 to cut the lead to 42. Like, that joke that goes around on the internet. Go look at go look at Ty Jerome's reaction to Davion Mitchell. Go watch that and go look at Ty Jerome's reaction to Davion Mitchell hitting a half court shot. And you're just going to laugh, because that's kind of what it got down to.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. But Danny, thank you for coming on. Make sure you follow Danny on Locked On Cavs. Anywhere else people can find you, man?
My Substack, The Inside Shot, cover the team every day in written word. If you're looking for it, subscriptions right now, $6 a month. That is basically what I spend on coffee every day. So if you want to read about the Cavs, that's the place to go.
Are you running the win streak promotions this year?
I've been running a lot of them. I need to come up with some sort of deal to put on for annual subscriptions before the second round. I haven't thought of that yet. I've been a little sleep deprived lately, as I'm sure you can imagine. There have been some late nights in Miami, and not for the fun reasons. But there will be some sort of annual subscription deal that will be hitting your inboxes very soon if you sign up.
Absolutely. And look, you guys are going to want to stay locked in. This is a Cavs team that has the #1 rated offense and the defensive player of the year. That's usually a pretty good combination, right?
Teams like that tend to do well.
Yeah, definitely. Seems like a team built for playoff basketball.
Yeah.
But Danny, thank you for joining us. Everybody have a great day. Having a better night. Peace.